did it change your relationship with money? Because obviously bankruptcy seems like it's so much more than money, but that's what that strips all your material possessions away from you. So like going through that now, looking back, like is your relationship with money different?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I used to be a free spender, and I had that philosophy that if I spend it, it'll come back. Whether it was on marketing or employment or anything, I just spend, spend, spend. Now it's a lot more methodical and strategic. So I've got different operating procedures and practices in place to make sure that every dollar is accounted for. I'd always hear that. You hear Kevin on Shark Tank talking about each dollar as an individual soldier, and again, it's one of those cliche things, but you're just like, whatever, it's just money. It's just, it's just keep it flowing, keep it going.
Yeah.
And now it's like, okay, every dollar is accounted for, everything is strategic. There's always that kind of voice in the back of my head that's like, I never, ever want to be in that situation again. So definitely going to move forward and make sure that have a deeper appreciation. And then just, thanking God for the opportunity to be at the point that I'm at now, despite, where I was, because 3 years ago, I mean, there was no light at the tunnel. And now it's like, oh my gosh, with God and, the things that I'm putting in place and the people and the connections that I'm making, I can literally do anything. I could be the next Elon Musk. Probably not. I mean, that kind of stuff is extremely difficult for someone like me. But in my heart, I believe that I can do just about anything now. So,
yeah, let's just dive into that. So you went through this, crazy hardship. Your wife was there to support you, and then you got into was your next. Did you ever get a real job, or was your next venture real estate?
No, so I never got a real job. I sort of got I mean, I was contracted. So I had a friend that was in the auto industry. So he was in a very similar situation like me. It's just a very, strenuous business, very, cash hungry, capital intensive business. And he ended up in the same situation. So he got into roofing. He was like, hey man, it's lucrative. It's quick money. It'll get you back on your feet. So I did that for about, 6 months, and just it was contracted by a company that just basically gave you all the resources. You handled your book of business, you got 50% of the profits. So it was an easy way to just kind of start generating some money, have some money coming in. Did that for 6 months, was great at it, but just absolutely hated it. Hated selling roofs. But in the process of selling roofs, I started working with a bunch of investors. Investors need roofs, investors need, contractors. And the great thing about the company was that, like I said, that they contracted you, gave you all the resources, and then you basically ran it yourself. So I got to mingle with contractors, investors, insurance agents, all sorts of people that ultimately were connected in the real estate field. And so that started sparking interest, and then kind of seeing what investors were doing with projects and, talking and networking. And one night I just started watching a bunch of YouTube videos, and I actually just started listening to your podcast, and I was like, oh my gosh, where has this been my whole life? Like, my goodness, that passion was back. For the longest, it was like I was only seeing things in grayscale, like everything was just black and white. And all of a sudden that pop, that color, it's like going from, the old Android phones to the new iPhone. It's like, oh my gosh, look at the crystal clear, crisp quality. Like that was back in my life, and I got fired up about that. Started doing a bunch of research, and again, had that moment with my wife where I said, hey, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I want to start wholesaling real estate. I want to get into real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I want us to start building a legacy. I want to own rental property. I want to, own multifamily. And, she looks at me and she's like, I believe it. Do it. So,
after you just filed bankruptcy a couple years ago.
Yeah, exactly. But I explained to her, I was like, man, it really seems like I won't have as much, leverage and overhead. And, if I can learn a little bit more about this wholesaling, I've seen these houses, I've been on the roofs and things like that. I've been in the construction scene. I think I would be really good at this. And it just sounds so interesting. And I'm just like, the more I dive in, the more passionate I'm becoming, and she was all for it. So that was kind of that transition in, but I never actually took a W-2 job. Outside of when I was 16, I've never had W-2 employment.
Wow.
So 32 years old right now, so I haven't had a W-2 in 16 years.
It's crazy. Once you become an entrepreneur, it's so hard to go back and work for someone else, number one. And you honestly forget how to do that. Like, people would ask me weird questions sometimes, like, how do I do an interview or how do I do a resume? And honestly, I don't really know because I haven't done one in so long. It's just kind of crazy. So what's it been like the last couple of years? Gotten into real estate wholesaling, you wanted to do some wholesaling and some rental properties. What's that been like? It sounds like you've been pretty lucrative, pretty successful with it.
Yeah, so still, trending up. There's a lot of peaks and valleys, right? But ultimately, it's trending up. So just extremely grateful to be in this position and have this opportunity. And God and grit is what I call it. My back was against the wall after leaving roofing. I decided to just go, full-fledged into real estate. Got my first wholesale deal in it was less than 6 weeks or so. And it was from just looking at a roof. And I was driving in a city called Irving. I saw this house that had a big hole in the roof. And, I was so focused on roofs because I just left the roofing industry. So it's like God just kind of puts these little, things in your path. And I see this roof. It's obviously going to be leaking. So I volunteered to get on the roof and put a tarp on it. And just started talking with the owner, and she ended up having some back taxes. She was in a really bad predicament, needed to sell, and that's just kind of what spiraled the real estate career from there. Fast forward, to date, doing an average of 4 to 5 active wholesale, and then a few other, flips and things like that. It's not a massive portfolio. We've got 5 rental properties. I was hoping to be on and say, I have 100, but definitely we'll get to that point. Very determined. So, in just a few short years of actively being in real estate, I'm at the 2.5 year mark. I've got 5 rentals, and I've done well over 100 transactions.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Anybody that can just say that. And the thing is like we're in a very high margin business. So, doing 100 transactions, it's not like you're selling widgets or
cars
or coffee or whatever. Yeah,
$1,000 a pop. That was basically with tons of overhead. But yeah, you're right. Yeah. Even smaller than that. What is a widget? I
don't know. It's like
I was thinking of like a fidget spinner or something. I was like,
I don't know, just selling a T-shirt on Etsy. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. $2 margin or something. I don't know. Some T-shirt seller's gonna be like, they're not $2 margin. Whatever it is. It's just
So I just want to paint that picture. So number one, guys, if you're listening, we all go through hardships, I think is the biggest thing. Toby, you've gone through the ultimate probably hardship of an entrepreneur is to lose everything, right? But you still had your family. If you could choose one or the other, if you could lose all your material possessions versus I've seen some entrepreneurs have all their material there and they lose their family, right? And that's even way worse. Yeah. So I just want to kind of paint that picture to you. And then you reached out to me. We had a conversation about a month or so ago. And you've been very successful with wholesaling, doing 100 transactions. And you are, I would consider, a very successful entrepreneur right now. You got the world just... you can continue building this wholesale business. You can do 1,000 transactions. You can get up to 100 rentals or 200 if you want to. Like you said, you're pretty much unstoppable. The processes in the system, and now it's just kind of putting it together, being consistent with it all, and building it from there. You could do that. But the conversation that we had was a little bit different because I started talking about, which I always open up this can of worms. I go to these events and everybody's talking about, I'm doing this many deals or making this much money. And I talk about, well, I'm just searching for purpose in my life. And I always make everybody feel weird and uncomfortable. But we started having that conversation, and I just want to kind of have that conversation with you right now. You were listening to me, and I was saying, man, I just want to go beyond success. I want to go into significance. I mean, I want to be impactful, and you've even said that word. You want to impact people's lives. So I want to just dig into your mind today, because I know you've been kind of struggling a little bit with some of these feelings back and forth. Maybe God's tugging you, maybe he's not, I don't know. But how are you feeling with all this right now, kind of searching for purpose, significance? You're making a lot of money, you're doing really well. World says Tobias he's doing good. I mean, 100 transactions. I don't know what you're making per deal, but pretty awesome, man. How are you feeling otherwise?
Yeah, definitely want to apologize in advance. It's always that time you're on a recorded Zoom call that they start mowing the grass, and all that. So
It's all good.
you might hear some grass mowing in the background. But yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed it. So it's a weird phenomenon, and I was outside of talking to you. I didn't know that other people felt like this. So and it's hard for me to even say that I'm successful, because I'm like everybody else, right? I want to just keep pushing. I'm the most competitive person I know. Success would mean that I owned everything in the world, right? So,
there's never a limit. You'll never win that game,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. So like for me to even say I'm successful, like it's like I've got something holding my tongue back. It hurts to say it. But we'll just say, that, I mean, I'm successful by any standard, right? So I just keep asking myself, first of all, when is enough going to be enough? And is there ever enough? And is this really the true meaning of life? Just obtaining wealth, making sure that my little bubble is secure, right? That my kid has, the best Nikes and, the best basketball training, goes to, whatever school, and, has his piano lessons, and my daughter, follows that same path, and, my wife can, freely do as she pleases, and, get her hair done every month, just those little comforts that you start to establish, and, and I can just, go buy a new car and, travel, we've traveled probably 4 or 5 times during the pandemic, and, you just start thinking about that. It's like, yeah, that's great. That's the stuff that we dream about when we, make that leap into entrepreneurship. But for me, it's like, I look at that stuff and I'm like, okay, that's great. I love being with my family. That is definitely the significance, a piece of the significance. But I know that, God has instilled this energy in me and this desire in me, and there's got to be more.
Thank you so much for checking out the Brett Snodgrass channel. If you like this video, please slam on that like button. And if you really like it, then subscribe to our channel here. And remember to leave us a comment below, and I'm going to try my hardest to reply to all the comments. Thank you guys so much. This is why I do what I do. Every single week, I come out with content that focuses on success, freedom, and living out your purpose. Thank you guys so much. See you next time.